Hello, my name is Chris Walters, and I'm a principal sales engineer with Denodo Technologies. We recently conducted a challenge to use Denodo's AI capabilities to create something useful for a particular problem domain. I'm from St. Anne, Jamaica, so I wanted to use AI to discover insights and opportunities to help Jamaica reach its highest potential. So, began with this question. Here's a challenge. How can AI help in better understanding Jamaica's challenges and opportunities and assist in developing a strategic plan for achieving its highest potential for the benefit of the Jamaican people? So, with that as my challenge, here's the plan overall. Begin with the goal. The goal is just the question we just asked just now. And from that, collect data, different data points to help us answer these questions. And we ask questions, and then re-ask questions. And after going through this process, we formulate conclusions. And then from that, we generate a growth and development plan for Jamaica going forward. In more detail, the process involves identifying relevant data sets, whether economic, social, educational, cultural, or health data about Jamaica and some of its Caribbean neighbors for comparison's sake. So identify these data sets from the World Bank, the IMF, Jamaica Open Data Foundation. And so after identifying those relevant data sets, downloaded 70 different data sets of Caribbean data, and then using Denodo to build a unified point of access to these disparate sources of data. And then using Denodo's assistant, which is a component which is part of the Denodo platform, generate descriptive metadata of all these data sets. And that adds the relevant semantic context, which is very important from the standpoint of helping the LLM to understand what each different data set means. And after that step, then we configure Denodo's AI SDK to use an LLM. In this case, I use OpenAI's GPT-4 Turbo to connect to Denodo. And then using a sample chatbot application, ask probing questions to understand different patterns, correlations, and identify challenges and opportunities for Jamaica's future development. And then the final step in this plan was to generate an actionable development plan for helping Jamaica to achieve its growth goals. Now, before we go into the actual demo, let's kind of step back and see exactly where the Notice AI capabilities come into this picture. So here, we're all familiar with ChatGPT and other AI applications, which enables us to ask questions of an LLM like an OpenAI and receive a response. Now, these LLMs are built, populated from publicly available information on the internet. So now what's missing from this picture is data that's central to an organization. Private internal data to an organization is not in these LLMs, but you want that capability that we're all accustomed to with using, ChatGPT, for example. So all of our internal data, whether it's an internal data center or data that we have in one of these hyperscalers, AWS, Azure, or GCP, or some SaaS applications, ideally what we want is to augment the information that's in the LLMs with data that's internal to our organization. So this is where Denodo comes in. So Denodo enables a unified point of access to consume data from these multiple sources without having to replicate any data. Also builds a semantic layer, which has the contextual definition of what each one of these data sets means, and things like security and governance rules regarding accessing these data points. That's part of the platform as well. And now combined with Denodo's capabilities, we have the Denodo AI SDK, which now provides all the functionality that Denodo enables and makes that available to AI applications. So now if I have an AI application, I can ask a question sent to Denodo's AI SDK, and based on the particular prompt that I give, is able to search the vector embeddings of my semantic information to understand what different data sets is it going to take for me to answer a particular question. And then based on that, use the LLM to generate a query, which is then sent to Denodo, and Denodo's processing engine then formulates queries to send to these multiple sources, retrieve data, return it to the LLM, which now makes sense of it, and returns the results to generates a response to return to my AI application. So That's the capability that Denodo adds to these sorts of applications, and that's what we're going to demonstrate. Let's look at this in action. Okay, so this is Denodo's Design Studio, and this is what you would use to connect to your relevant sources of data, whether they be, databases or data lakes or SaaS applications, Excel or delimited files. And this is what you would use to connect to those sources and create views representing these different data sets. Now, for the maximum accuracy of AI applications, a step that's necessary beyond this is to generate the contextual metadata. Exactly what does this view mean? Each attribute within this view, what exactly do they mean? So the more context that you're able to give around the semantics of each one of these data sets, that will improve the overall accuracy of your AI applications. So that's where Denodo's AI assistant comes into play. So here you can configure this to use a large language model, and it will essentially pass this metadata to the LLM and ask it to generate a description for each one of these views and each attribute within a view. So if I now click on Denodo Assistant and say suggest field descriptions, it will pass that information to the LLM, and then based on that metadata, it will then generate a description for each one of these attributes. And so going beyond the attribute level, I can also do this at the entity level to say exactly what does this data set represent. Again, pass that information to the LLM. And now the more context that I have for what this data represents, this will improve the accuracy of my AI applications. So once I have these defined and I have that metadata that's necessary, I can now go into using the chatbot. And again, the more information I give around descriptive information about what each one of these data sets means, it will improve the accuracy of my results in my AI application. Okay, so this is a sample chatbot application which was built using the Denodo AI SDK, which integrates with a large language model of your selection and is able to augment that LLM with information from Denodo. And again, Denodo provides a central point of access to all of your data, regardless of where it may exist. So I'm going to go through this by asking a series of questions, and the purpose of this is to essentially educate the LLM with information of my underlying data set. And then once given that, it will then generate a growth plan for Jamaica going forward. So I'm going to start off by asking questions like what conclusions can be drawn on the economic health of Jamaica based on available data. And so when I submit that question, what's now happening is it will then generate the vector embeddings for these questions to then search against the vector database within Denodo, which contains vector embeddings of the metadata, describing the different data sets, what each different data set is, what each different attribute means, and the more context you provide to the LLM, then the better your responses are. So I send that, and now upon doing that, now it will send a query to Denodo's. The LLM will generate a query to send to Denodo. The Denodo's processing engine will then go through and send a query to Denodo to get back a result set. So in summary, what it says, the economic health of Jamaica, it shows high inflationary periods with a modest GDP growth rate. And we're able to visualize that here. So you see the inflation rate peak in the mid 20s and the early, I guess in the mid 1990s. But now it's kind of, manageable below 5%. But you see during that time period, very modest GDP growth rate. So that just gives you, again, and doing this, it's now educating the LLM. So I'm going to ask some more questions, like what key observations about Jamaica's trade balance? And from this, you will learn that one of the major problems that Jamaica has from a trade standpoint is a persistent trade deficit. So you see, high imports with very little exports. So obviously, that presents a significant opportunity. So here to visualize it, you see the top graph shows the imports, and the blue line shows the exports, and then the bottom one shows the trade deficit. So you can see by analyzing these trends, you see a big problem that we have in Jamaica is the trade deficit. So increasing our exports is a very significant aspect of growth for Jamaica going forward. But this, kind of visualizes it. So again, I'm going to continue go through asking a series of questions to educate our LLM. So the next question I'm going to ask is about energy production and consumption in Jamaica. And so same process generates the vector embeddings for that question and then generates a query to send to Denodo. And then, here it shows, different forms of energy production. So diverse means of energy production. And also there's high, power usage within Jamaica. So, this provides an opportunity for how best Jamaica can grow from a power standpoint. So we import a lot less. The next one we're going to do is ask it about Jamaica's top industries and its impact on the GDP. So just to visualize it, here are some of the top contributing sectors to Jamaica's GDP. And again, as beyond just wanting to know this information, what this in turn does is educates the LLM. It augments the information that's in the LLM with additional information from our local data set. And then a persistent problem in Jamaica is the overall debt. And so we want to visualize the condition in Jamaica regarding the overall debt and how we can get better in that standpoint. And then, one of the most important aspects here is investment in Jamaica, foreign direct investment, and its impact on GDP, encouraging investors from abroad to help grow local industries, such as being more productive with agriculture and energy and things of that nature. That's a very important aspect for Jamaica going forward. And so, again, these series of questions, the purpose is to, get a base level of understanding. And from that, I'm now going to ask the LLM to generate a growth plan for Jamaica. Now I've kind of educated it, right? And now, given that information, I want you to generate a growth plan for Jamaica going forward. And so, based on that information, send that to LLM, and it kind of sums up the main points here. Enhancing foreign direct investment, so have initiatives to encourage investment, tax incentives or what have you, to encourage investment from abroad. Improving, the overall infrastructure, human capital development, so people can, kind of understand the needed skills in this new economy. Promoting tourism. Tourism, as I mentioned, is very central to everything that happens in Jamaica. Supporting entrepreneurship, enhancing overall agricultural productivity, different policy reforms. So that kind of sums up what the chatbot is able to determine by analyzing the data sets about Jamaica and other Caribbean neighbors. I didn't ask many questions about comparison to any other Caribbean nations. But given that information, we're able to generate a growth plan. Okay, so let's look at some of the conclusions of our Gen AI based research. So here's our development plan that our chatbot application was able to generate by looking at the available data. Enhanced tourism infrastructure. Tourism is very important in Jamaica, and other industries kind of benefit from that. Promote high-tech industries, give incentives for tech companies and startups to start businesses in Jamaica. Invest heavily in education, STEM-based education in particular. Expand renewable energy projects. So we now are producer of energy instead of importing as much as we currently do. Improve agricultural productivity. Agriculture is still a very strong segment within Jamaica. And most of these steps in this plan involve heavy investment. So enhancing foreign direct investment to enhance the attractiveness of Jamaica as an investment destination. Boost local manufacturing, develop public infrastructure, foster regional trade, and implement economic diversification programs. So as a result of analyzing the data of the current state of things within Jamaica, our LLM is able to then generate these ideas for a development plan going forward. So in summary, again, this is what was generated by our application. Jamaica's past trends and current data present a mixed landscape. With challenges and significant opportunities, we're focusing primarily on the opportunities. So, strategic investments in key sectors like renewable energy, technology, and tourism, coupled with a focus on education and sustainable practices, can drive future economic growth and development. So, again, this was generated by our AI application just by analyzing the data of current state of things in Jamaica from an economic, social, cultural standpoint, and they actually generated this information. And so this is something that a government minister, for example, can take to run a campaign on. Say these are the steps that I will implement in order to have Jamaica grow at a 5% GDP rate, for example. So you see something that's very actionable and very useful. We're able to generate by looking, analyzing all of our data, and then draw conclusions from that. So, in conclusion, now we know the AI opportunity is significant. Expected annual growth rate of 40% in Gen AI over the next 5 years by some estimates. And we know governments collect a lot of data. Local, regional, and national governments collect multiple exabytes of data annually, an exabyte being a billion gigabytes. And Forrester did a study, and it said roughly 60 to 75% of collected data goes unused. So we have all this data that governments and other organizations are collecting, but we're not using it. So this is where AI comes in, where you have all this data and you may not know exactly what questions to ask, but you can just ask open-ended questions to identify patterns and trends, and it's able to identify things that are difficult for a human to identify on their own. So we know the speed, the power, and scalability of AI makes it possible to discover hidden patterns, correlations, trends that it's difficult for humans to identify on their own. Some possible use cases for Gen AI in government: personalized citizen services using AI-driven chatbots. As a citizen interacting with the government and you need answers to a particular question, it can be a challenge. Let me just state it that way. So if we have an AI-driven approach to that to analyze the data and guide you through that process, it could provide a very valuable service. Urban planning and infrastructure optimization, such as traffic optimization, for example, enhancing public health insights, and open government and transparency initiatives. So being able to use all this data that we have access to and put it to use with the benefit of AI. So those are some of the use cases that are identified for use of government data. All right, so that was an overview of how you can use Denodo's AI capabilities to generate powerful data-driven insights into a specific problem domain. So for more, visit us at denodo.com. Thank you very much.